Welcome everyone, gentlemen, gentle children, and I'm told sometimes women playing this game too. What we're talking about for today is gearing up your character at max level, the min-maxing way to get as high of item level as you can before the pre-release of the season on March the 17th, when the raids open, but not Mythic Plus, which will open the next week. Because of course, it can be quite the daunting process as you finish your leveling, you ding max level, you look at your character, you are 178 item level, and then you look at your dungeon prospects and you see that heroic, to even be available for you to join, you need to be 211 item level. You're like 30 item levels below even the entrance of heroic dungeons. And today in NA and tomorrow in EU, Mythic0 opens. And for Mythic0 you might want to be 220, 225 plus item level to get in comfortably. And you're like, damn, I'm like 30 plus item levels, not even there. How do we bridge the gap? So let's start with the first thing that is relevant basically for this week only, and after that it will change its value. We are talking about the Midnight World Tour. This is the weekly quest given to you by Lord Tamar, which is basically do the weeklies. The war within weeklies, like the Awakening the Machine in the Ringing Deeps, the Spreading the Light weekly event in Hallowfall, the Theater Troupe right outside of Dornogal, those weeklies. In this expansion you have the Sartaville Soiree in Eversong Wilds, you have the Abundance event in Zulaman, you have the Void Storm event, the Singularity, to defend, etc, etc. Those are for your spark. Your crafting spark is what you get rewarded with these weekly events. However, what they are relevant for this week is because if you have reached the necessary Renown with the 4 factions, so Renown 9 with Silver Moon and the Amani, and then Renown 8 with Harati, and Renown 7 with the Singularity in Voidstorm, they are the breakpoints of Renown to get you your champion track piece of gear, 246 item level piece of gear. We're talking about helmet, belt, trinket, and necklace. Now, why is this relevant? Is because we were a bit afraid it could have possibly been a quest that unlocks the item from the vendor and then costs several thousand void light marls, the currency you have been getting from everywhere, to actually purchase the item, which is okay on a single character, but if you were playing 2, 3, or even 4 characters, having to buy with that currency all of these 4 different items from the vendors would have costed you a lot of this currency. Luckily, we've had the confirmation now that this event has been available with the reward of the gear available even before the full reset of the week, that it is just a quest reward. Doesn't actually cost you anything, you just complete the weekly and you get the piece of gear. Which means good. Already from the get-go, as the weekly reset comes, you are able to do these 4 weekly events, which you were going to do basically anyways, because you wanted your spark, right? Hopefully. And you can already count in your bank the 246 item level helmet, necklace, trinket, and belt. That's to start with. Now, the simplest thing to bridge the gap between going from scuffed green leveling gear into even be able to be allowed into heroic dungeons in the first place is obviously world quests, is the bridge that as soon as you hit max level, even if you are at 180 item level, most of the world quest rewards will start at 220 item level as a base reward. And right now, at least still before the reset, they are growing as high as 230 item level. So already, even before going into heroic dungeons, you can siphon a whole bunch of different gear from different world quests. For example, at least as far as EU world quests go, between yesterday and today, you could have gotten a full set of rings, a full set of trinkets, helmet, chest, shoulders, pants, boots, as well as a weapon, all between 220 and 230 item level from these world quests. Practically almost all of your gear was going to be given to you from these world quests. So the question becomes pretty simple. If you even just did world quests plus the Renown levels to earn the 246 item level pieces from the Renown vendors, you would already be in the near 220-ish item level range before even doing any dungeons, really. So you were basically already ready to enter Mythic0 this reset when they open. Now, in case you could get confused by looking at different charts, different spreadsheets of item level, remember that even if Mythic0 opens this reset, we are still in the pre-season version of the game, which means the item levels are still going to be limited for the next couple of weeks, which means that what you see in normal dungeons, for example, where the reward says 214 item level, or heroic dungeons where the reward is 224, and then finally obviously Mythic0, which has 240 item level gear, these are still gimped, nerfed by 6 item levels before March the 17th. So they will be at a lower item level than what it will actually become in a couple of weeks. But in a couple of weeks, it won't really be nearly as relevant. We assume that once, for example, the raid is open or Mythic Plus is open the week after that, you know, the item level dropping from heroic dungeons, for example, won't be too relevant anymore. So essentially, already from having the world quest from 220 to 230 item level, 4 different items from the Renown vendors at 246 item level, you are kind of good to go. We didn't really need to go through too much of a min-maxing guide on how to squeeze every bit of item level from your possible rewards. The only extra you might have or you might consider is the crafting, as we said. It is possible, since you won't really make too much use of the adventurer crests, which is just about the only crests you could be earning in this pre-season. And then this following weekly reset, when you will also have access to the veteran crests as well. We don't know if the champion track crest will be too available, really, but veteran crests will. And you can spend those to upgrade your gear, because the gear from Mythic0 that will be able to drop in this following reset will be veteran track, 3 out of 6, 240 item level. Now, while it's bad that it is gimped, it's nerfed, instead of being champion track 1 out of 6, it will be temporarily for these next couple of weeks, only veteran track 3 out of 6. The glass half full part of this is that at least you can upgrade it with veteran crests, which you won't really be needing after these next couple of weeks. They will be obsolete very soon. You can spend them to upgrade the gear. Imagine you loot a pretty decent, for example, trinket or best in slot stats, rings or necklace. It could be worth to upgrade with veteran crests. Also, there is the crafting, as we said. Crafting, which in this expansion has been upped from 60 crests per craft to 80 crests per craft. Between this week, where you could get up to 100 in this week, which is the new cap, and then the cap of next week, which will add an extra 100, and then the cap of next week as well, you can get yourself upwards of 3 different crafts of adventurer gear and veteran gear. Now, this is relevant early on because adventurer gear can go all the way up to at max quality at 233 item level, and veteran gear can go all the way up to 246 item level. Now, question mark on just exactly how many crafters will be able to get it to be at max quality this early on in this expansion. It's likely not going to happen. However, it can still be worthwhile. It can be worthwhile, for example, because embellishments still exist, which means that by the end of next reset, you will be able to have access, for example, before the raid opens, to having 2 crafted items with your embellishment power already on. Obviously, you use the same strategy of the past, like using low stats slots for your embellishments. Now that you don't even have the annoying artifact cloak anymore, you can also open up the cloak for an embellishment. The belt, the wrists are your typical embellishment slots, or for example, if you value secondary stats, you can start crafting a ring, one of the 2 rings with your best in slot stats, for example. That is another good way of increasing your item level early on, both with the adventurer dawn crests, which won't really be that relevant for basically very long, and then the veteran dawn crests, which will also become obsolete very soon. So the potential plan, which luckily is not really that complicated once you hit max level, is to look around and soak up all of the world quests that reward gear. Unfortunately, the players who did go through early access did have tiny advantage on this, since a few of the world quests have by now expired already, which rewarded you with gear. So you hit max level with whatever leveling gear you were being given from quest rewards, for example. You can start getting into the 220 plus item level range from world quests. With this weekly reset and all of the weekly events becoming available, you can complete all 4 of them for your 4 different 246 item level pieces from the Renown vendor, which luckily the items will just be a quest reward and will cost you nothing, and you wanted to do those weekly quests anyways. There is also the RNG element, just like last expansion, which was relevant for the first couple of weeks of the season. The weekly cache, the weekly event, you will talk to Liadrin. She will give you the options of choosing one of the weekly events to complete, and it will give you the weekly cache, which can give you a piece of veteran gear randomly. The Pinnacle cache gear you don't really get to choose, but it could still come up with something useful. And then once you have the world quest gear and once you have your 246 pieces from the Renown vendors, you should be near 220 item level, at which point you are good enough to enter Mythic0s. Now, if you are particularly unlucky with Mythic0s, you don't really get that much loot, well, you have this reset and then the reset of March the 10th and then the reset of March the 17th before Mythic Plus is open. So you have 3 full resets to do 8 dungeons. 8, 8, 8. You have 24 dungeons at chances of gear from Mythic0 before Mythic Plus opens. On top of that, if you're still unlucky, between the beginning of this weekly reset, you will have available the Prey World event and the Delves, which can also give you veteran track gear. Prey can give you basically 2 chances a week at veteran track gear. It will go all the way up to hero track gear once the season opens, but that will be less relevant, since then Mythic Plus can also give you spammable hero track gear. However, it is still in the back. It's like a last resort chance. If you've not been as lucky, you can get further veteran track pieces from doing the Prey events, etc. But Mythic0 is more pressing than Prey system. But you are definitely free to do that if you will have time these weeks, since there isn't much else to do with your 8 dungeons being limited for the week in Mythic0. Maybe you get 3-4 items from Mythic0. You can still go and do your 2 prays per week on the character for the gear, which is the cap, and then bring up, for example, your delves all the way up to level 8 for the week, and then when it will be available to tier 11. But for now, the veteran track gear in these weeks is the cap from the delves. So essentially it is leveling into world quests, into weekly events to get your champion gear from Renown, into Mythic0, into delves, into Prey system. What is left then to your discretion will be the crafting and the spending of the soon-to-be useless adventurer crests and veteran crests. Whether you want to upgrade gear you already have or craft pieces of gear. For example, if you have been particularly unlucky and you're still stuck with some old expansion single piece of gear at 167 and you can get an adventurer piece at 233 for 80 adventurer crests, which you don't really have a decent way to spend otherwise, then you can also do that. And that should get you set and ready for Mythic0s. And then between this week round of Mythic0s, next week, and the week of the 17th of March, you should get into the opening of the raid at around 240 plus item level. That's the setup for the beginning of this expansion as far as your route for gearing up. So, as we started with I just hit max level, I am 30 item levels behind even being able to enter heroic dungeons, turns out heroic dungeons are useless. You don't really have too many reasons to actually go into heroic dungeons, provided you haven't griefed yourself and you mistakenly did world quests as you were leveling up. For example, on an alt, after you unlocked world quests and you did them at level 82 or 84, so the gear rewards went completely wasted. So you hit max level and you have no gear world quests. But if you still have them, then yeah, heroic dungeons don't really have too much of a use right now. So this is the recap on your gearing process for the beginning of the full pre-season release of the expansion after early access, after the pre-weekly reset global release. Now that we're about to get into the first weekly reset and the opening of more systems into the game, these are the smartest ways to path your gearing process. So, for today, on this Tuesday and incoming first weekly reset of the expansion, we can now leave each other. We are starting our goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I have these deja vu feelings right now. You do like 4 world quests, 3 weeklies and 1 dungeon, and then you realize, I now have to do this thing all over again on 3 more characters.